So for me, I get when it comes to full moon, for some reason, I do not know why, I tend to find myself lower in energy, lower in mood.
And I thought that was very interesting from a young priest who still has the thinking that yoga is actually invoking the devil.
And my family thought I'd joined a cult. They thought I was absolutely nuts. Hello and welcome to the show. Her name is
Ali Francis, and his name is...
My name is, I don't know. Today we're talking about cycles of life, because Ali is, getting on a bit.
and you are getting on a bit.
So I am 58 years old. I'm going to be 59 in 2 months' time. And as a result, it's quite an interesting time of life because obviously things change, physically, mentally, friendships change. We've just been talking for about half an hour just before we went live with this about the challenges of friendships that are, one of the things that I'll talk about was what my father once said to me once, and I'll share that in a bit later. But Ali, so tell us, what cycle are you in? And
what cycle am I in?
How old are you?
I'm glad you got to ask, Stephen. I am in my third act. Third act. Yes, okay. And I have no intention.
And how many acts are? Hang on, that's third of how many? Is that 3 of 3?
3 of 3. Yes, I'm in my third act.
And is the third act the final act?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh right, okay.
Life is.
I thought you meant there was going to be a four. Like there's a. So I would say you're in the third of a. Of 4 quarters.
Careful. Third of a quarter, third of a fourth.
No, but you're not. If your third act, as in, I would say there's a 4th act after this, isn't there?
Not really. No, life tends. Life does happen. Yeah, even. I just want to share this thing about Ayurveda because it's a very interesting thing. We're talking about cycles. Is that they say there's 3 cycles of life. The first cycle is the cycle of, they call it the Kapha cycle. So it's when you're strong, you're stable, you've got high immune system. And then you move into the fiery time where you're really doing stuff, you've got career and everything else, creating the Pitta time. And then you move into the autumn, which is the Vata time. And what happens in that time if you're not careful? If you're not careful, things start drying out. You know what happens in the autumn where leaves fall off the trees? They dry out and they fall down. So what we've got to do, we've got to keep the energy up. We've got to keep the moisturisation up. And we've got to keep kind of moving away from the pull to pull us downwards. And I think, I don't know about you, Stephen, you can tell me what you think, but I think that the 60 is the new 40. What do you think?
Well, I would agree with that to a certain extent. I think we do all go through cycles in life. We were just talking before we hit record about the fact that I'm somebody who's affected by cycles. So for me, I get when it comes to full moon, for some reason, I do not know why, I tend to find myself lower in energy, lower in mood. And whenever something seems to be a challenge in my life, and this is purely anecdotal. I'm not saying that this is a factual thing, but whenever I find myself struggling with things in life, quite often I'll then be reminded, or I'll see that it's at a full moon. And now, the term lunatic, which talks, is an old style term for those people who have mental health challenges. That relates to lunar being of the moon, and what has been well known in mental health institutions is come the full moon, it becomes quite problematic for the staff, because apparently around that time a lot of people have bigger mental health issues. And I know for me, I do get I can get quite low and quite de-energized around that period. Now, what's that got to do with the third act of, or the fourth act or whatever, is that, I feel that life goes in cycles. I feel like you have these spring, you have your summer, and then you have your autumn, and then you have your winter. And that can come around, every few years. You go through these different stages. A bit like businesses, have those moments where, you can be sometime during the spring, you're trying to reap, you're trying to, bring stuff in. And then you have the summer arrives and you have the harvest, and you reap the benefits from that. And then winter is when things are maybe a recession, or things are quite tight, or you have a personal issue, or whatever it is, and things become a lot tougher. I have found, my life being like that. I'm optimistic that my 60s are going to be my better, or if not best decade, because I bring to it a lot of knowledge that I have gained over the years. But, like all these things, is in order for me to put that knowledge to good use, I've got to make sure my health is in the right place. So that's my biggest focus at the moment, is going into my 60s being as youthful as possible, so that I get to enjoy that time as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a good goal, and that's what I'm trying to do, is actually be as healthy as I possibly can, because whichever way you look at it, yes, you're going into the, I call it the third act, but you don't have as much energy as you did when you were 40 anyway, but you can keep your health going so that you can actually try to get your energy up, but you don't really have as much energy as you did when you're 40, I don't think, when you're in your 60s.
What's that down to? What's that? Why do we not have as much energy? Is that because we're not doing as much exercise, or or is it just something to do with the microbiome, or, our cells aging? What's the reason for that energy dip?
Well, I think if you think about, like I was saying before, the cycles of life, when you're the first third of your life, if you look at the human body, how strong the human body, how the immune system is strong, how there's lots of, nice fat under the tissue, the skin's smoother, and the energy is more into the growth, into the moving forwards. And then when you get into the next stage and you spend a lot of your energy building a family, building a business, you're using an awful lot of energy. And then as you get older, past that stage, I think that you actually, if you're not careful, you could end up being worn out if you haven't looked after yourself. But the other thing actually that have just come to mind is that if you've abused your system a lot over your lifetime, it's in your 60s that you actually start to pay. And I think that as a sort of a group, I consider you guys my family, and we've always been focused on well-being for the last, 25, 30 years. So we've always tried our best. And I think that I haven't really drunk excessively. Well, I haven't really drunk excessively, or of course I've had alcohol and things like that, but I haven't actually. I've been very focused on yoga.
You've done your yoga for 20 years. Before that, you were what do they call it when you teach people aerobics and stuff? What's that?
Yeah, I started my career as an aerobics fitness instructor. Then I went into
that's the word.
aromatherapy, blah blah blah. Then beauty, and then into the more spiritual yoga, breath work and Ayurveda type of thing. So it's always been a focus of mine. I've always been very interested in that stuff, and I think it does definitely help. So I think that I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, I'll pass it back over to you and it'll come back.
Worries. I mean, is 60 the new 40? I don't know whether I agree with that. I was very different. It depends where we're going with where is 60 the new 40. 60 the new 40 in terms of mental thought processes, or is 60 the new 40 with regards to our physical capability and physical looks? I think it sort of seems to me that when people say 60 the new 40, it's more about attitude. And I do think that, people generally are, I look back to when my parents were in their 50s, and when I was young, I used to look at them and think, oh my God, they're so old. They look so, and actually, when I look back on old photographs, they do look older. Not as old as I thought they did when I was a kid, but they do look older. And I think that obviously life was harder back then, or nutrition maybe wasn't as good back then, and as a result people did age. And also there was a huge culture of drinking and smoking and general not looking after yourself. As the gyms were not a big thing then, keeping fit wasn't a big thing. Yoga was not a thing at all. I remember 20 years ago talking to my family about yoga after we'd been on the Tony Robbins Life Mastery, where we'd done a cleanse for a week. And my family thought I'd joined a cult. They thought I was absolutely nuts. Yeah. And they were really worried about me. They thought this yoga, they were like, what is this shit? Who you have been under the influence of some cult guru, and now they're like, they talk about yoga. It's like, oh yeah, well, I've been to a yoga class. I'm like, do you not remember 20 years ago when you thought I was in some kind of cult? People have short memories. Short memories.
Well, I must tell you this funny story about yoga and the way that people see yoga. There was a priest, a friend of mine whose mum visits the priest here in Italy, and she's also a yoga teacher. And the priest said to her mum that us yoga people, we invoke the devil. And I thought that was very interesting from a young priest who still has the thinking that yoga is actually invoking the devil, which of course is.
Is this guy surely not an English?
No, it's Italian. It's Italian.
There's something about the Italians. They're very, very superstitious, aren't they?
Very, very superstitious. It's the Catholicism, I think.
But I don't remember. I mean, I was brought up a Catholic. I was going to say a Catholic, and superstition was something, but not to that extent.
Yeah, and he was very young, so I found that very, very interesting. But going back to your question about 40 is 60 the new 40. I think what that really means is that 25 years ago, people in their 60s were preparing to give up, and they're preparing to couldn't wait to get their pension. But now in their 60s, they go, well, I certainly feel I've got another game in me. Yeah. That's why I think it's described as the new 40, because at 60, you're still looking forward. You're still thinking, I'm creating, because that's what you're doing in your 40s. And you hit 60, if you hit 60 25, 30 years ago, it was considered that you're going to be pensioned soon. It's like, someone said to me, when am I getting my pension? I'm like, oh, I haven't really thought about it. Pension. I don't actually, connect to it. Of course, it'd be nice to have some money.
I think again, but that partly with us being self-employed as well. That we don't. Pension and retirement is not something that we think of. I mean, I don't know about you, but
I don't think of
I
it.
think we have talked about this before, but I don't ever see myself retiring. I see myself doing another business or this business or something until I fall off this multiple. Because I see people who do retire, and quite a few of them die fairly quickly, and other people who do retire, then they take up golf or what have you, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. Sounds, sounds. Don't get me wrong. I would like to have a lifestyle that allows me to play plenty of golf. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think I want to be that being the source and only focus. I want to be doing something. I want to be giving back or doing something. I don't know.
I think one of the things I noticed when my dear, lovely mum was in a rest home. Of course, when you're at that point in your life, I think you sort of lose purpose. And I think what is needed to keep you going actually is purpose. And whether that is, and one of the things I thought if I didn't actually need to work, I would focus on my charity. Because I'm president of a charity, Helping Hands for India. And I would just focus on that school. I would focus on fundraising. And it would give me a really lovely purpose. And I think that when you get to a certain point in your life and retirement is looming, for some people, they go, oh my God, what am I going to do with myself? And I think it's the thought of not having a purpose. And that makes you contract and get old very quickly. And I think that's what happens. That thing where people would retire and then all of a sudden they would save everything for their retirement and then actually they become ill.
Yeah.
Which is devastating. I mean, that was so very much
all this time to save up all this money for their retirement. And then suddenly they are rendered incapable or not incapable sometimes, but certainly not able to enjoy as much as they would like to. If they have a heart attack or if they have a stroke or something that then affects their ability to really go and enjoy themselves.
I think also that the 40 is the 60 is the new 40 also is that we, in our generational state, we actually want to live life and do stuff now. We don't think, I'll do that when I'm retired. We think, if I can, I want to do it now. We don't have that mentality of only doing things when we're retired.
I actually used to work in the recruitment world, and a chap who worked on the next desk to me, who was a very, very funny guy, he worked through his holidays. Okay, he was married and he worked through his holidays every time. And the reason why he did it, he said, was because I want to pay off my mortgage as quickly as possible. So I'm not taking any holidays. I'm going to work through my holidays. And I was like, dude, that is nuts, because number one, you are not getting any kind of interest in your life, new culture, meeting new people. How does that affect your wife? Because no, she's fine with it because I'm going to pay my mortgage off. And I was like, right, okay. Anyway, 3 years into working with him, he came in devastated because his wife had decided to leave him. Okay. And set the course in process of having a divorce, which ended up him losing the house that he was paying so much towards and not having any holidays. And it just seemed so ironic that he, for the 4 years, had taken no holidays whatsoever, was, obsessed about paying the mortgage off. And yet he lost his house in the divorce. Yeah,
no. I think there's a lot to be said for balance. Yes, we have to sort of save for a rainy day. Not that I've ever done that. But I've always lived my life flying by the seat of my pants. That's what I've usually done. But I don't regret it at all. I don't think
flying by the seat of your pants is the right way to describe it. I think that you've lived life to the full. If you think about what you've done,
to the best of my ability. Yeah, I've done lots of things.
You've done lots of things. You've traveled the world. You have helped charities. You've adopted, was it just one Indian girl?
Moina, yeah, Moina.
Did you adopt her, or did you just become her?
I call it a bit of a spiritual adoption. So she calls me mum, and I'm her mum. But
yeah, and you've done so much for her. You've also created 2 beautiful homes, one in Salisbury and one in Italy, where you are now. You've become a advanced yoga teacher, a sleep specialist. The list goes on. It really is amazing. And likewise, I have worked in a restaurant, which was ran a very successful restaurant. I then got into recruitment. I then ran my own recruitment agency. I then started a video production business, which then went on to creating my own set of successful career training DVDs. I then set up a chocolate company. How random is this? From restaurants to recruitment.
You're a sommelier as well, aren't you?
A what?
You're sommelier
not really.
as well?
As in somebody who's trained with wine.
Yeah.
We had a very extensive wine list, so I know a little bit about wine.
Okay.
I would not class myself as a sommelier anyway.
Okay.
But then I created and ran a dairy-free chocolate business. And then at the end of that, the new cycle was, right, I'm now, as you know, my wife is a portrait artist, and I do all of her marketing and the marketing of 10 other artists and 6 sculptors, which is mainly my full-time job. But now we're putting our energies into this podcast because we feel that we wanted to do something to give back. And for me, I've got 2 daughters, and I want them, if anything, touch wood, nothing does happen, but if something does happen, that they've got something that they can refer to as my sort of guiding principles for life. As I talked to you previously, I thought about recording some videos for them of my tips on life and all that kind of stuff. And then I thought, well, actually, I could kill 2 birds with 1 stone here, and that's actually create the podcast where we would talk about that kind of stuff. And then if anything does happen to me, please don't, not quite yet. I'm not ready for that just yet. And then if that is the case, then they can refer to our podcast and have a memory of me as I am, giving some tips that hopefully they can then use in their life. But
yeah, it's really nice.
Well, we are at the end of today's show. I don't know whether did we answer the question, or did we just do one of our round robins where we just talked about all sorts of different things?
Well, we did talk a bit. It's all sort of about the cycles of life, what they are, and if.
What's the takeaway? What's the takeaway for people watching this?
I think the takeaway is that wherever you are in your life, just have a purpose, because that will keep you going. And I think the moment you lose sight of the purpose, at whatever age you are, you become old, because actually if you think about what does nature do, it moves towards the light. The plants grow up, the trees grow up, we're moving towards the light and we're growing. And I think if you're not growing constantly, then you're dying. Yeah. So I think...
But also that for those people who say, but I'm too old to do something like that, or I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm too whatever it is, but especially for those people who say I'm too old to go and do something, I want to leave you with this Chinese proverb, and that is the best time to start something is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The second best time to start something is right now.
Brilliant.
So my little takeaway for you is wherever you are, and no matter how old you are, is start. One of my friends who was working with a very good job in the banking industry, she was at a crossroads because her marriage had come to an end, and she'd always had this dream that she'd love to be a florist. But she had this really good job in banking and just didn't want to leave it. And I just said, fuck it. Doesn't matter. The fact that you feel too old to do it, just do it.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best decisions. She now has a fabulously successful florist, which she absolutely loves. She doesn't see it as work. And she's created amazing products, and the shop is beautiful, really beautiful. And yet, for most people, you would say, oh, she was too old to start that. So you're never too old.
No, you're never too old.
So,
I think the other thing is it's just a number. And I think it's just really a number. I mean, Trini Woodall, she was doing a podcast the other day, and she said it's just a number. And she started her business, his Trini Woodall thing, when she was in her mid-50s. And now she's got a multi-million pound business going on. Yeah. But not even just business. I just think that it's just anything that gives you a sense of purpose.
Yeah, well, we've got a multi-penny podcast.
Multi-penny podcast.
She's got multi-millions. We've got multi-pennies.
On
that note.
Yes.
We hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please click subscribe, like, share. And in the meantime, we'll see you on the next one. It's a goodbye from her.
And it's a goodbye from him.